Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Endeavour, looking out at the dark space ahead. The stars looked the same as they always did, cold and distant. His ship had been traveling for 3 weeks now, moving further from Earth than any human ship had gone before. "Captain, we're getting close to the target area," said Lisa Hamilton from her seat at the communications desk. She was young, maybe 25, with bright eyes that never seemed to get tired. "The science team wants to start their scans in about an hour." Jake nodded. This was supposed to be a simple mission. Find new planets that might be good for human colonies. Look for resources that Earth needed. Maybe find signs of alien life, though no one really expected that anymore. Humans had been exploring space for over 100 years and had never found anyone else out there. "Any problems with the ship?" Jake asked his chief engineer, Karen Davis. She was sitting at the back of the bridge, watching the engine readings. On her screen, "Everything looks good, Captain. The new engines are working better than expected. We could probably go even further if needed." Jake smiled a little. The USS Endeavour was one of the newest ships in the human fleet. It had the best engines, the best computers, and the best crew that Earth could provide. Jake felt proud to command it, even if this mission was pretty boring so far. Dr. Amy Rogers looked up from her science station. She was older than the others, maybe 40, with gray hair that she always kept tied back. "Captain, I'm reading some interesting energy patterns about 2 light years from here. It might be worth checking out." "What kind of energy patterns?" Jake asked. "I'm not sure yet. It could be natural, like from a star that's acting strange. But it could also be artificial, made by someone." Jake felt his heart beat a little faster. Every space explorer dreamed of finding proof that humans weren't alone in the universe. How long would it take to get there? "About 6 hours with our current speed," said Pete Williams from the pilot's seat. Pete was Jake's oldest friend. They had been in the Space Academy together, and Jake trusted him more than anyone. "Do it," Jake said. "Change course. Let's go see what's out there." The ship turned smoothly and began moving toward the strange energy readings. Jake tried not to get too excited. Most of the time, these things turned out to be natural events. Strange stars, weird space weather, things like that. But sometimes, just sometimes, they found something really interesting. 4 hours later, Lisa suddenly sat up straight at her station. "Captain, I'm getting something on the emergency frequencies." "What kind of something?" Jake asked, moving to stand behind her chair. "It's a signal, very weak, very far away. But it's definitely artificial. Someone is sending it." The bridge became very quiet. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at Lisa. Jake felt his mouth go dry. "Can you clean it up? Make it clearer?" Lisa's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "I'm trying, but it's really weak. The signal is coming from the same area as those energy readings Dr. Rogers found." "Keep working on it," Jake said. He looked around at his crew. Everyone looked excited and nervous at the same time. "Amy, what do your sensors tell us about that area now?" Dr. Rogers checked her readings. "There's definitely something there, Captain. I'm seeing lots of energy signatures. Some of them look like engines. Big ones." "How big?" Jake asked. "Bigger than anything humans have ever built. Much bigger." Jake felt a chill run down his back. If there were ships out there, and they were bigger than human ships, that meant someone else was in space. Someone with better technology than humans had. "Captain," Lisa called out, "I've got the signal cleaned up. You need to hear this." She put the signal on the bridge speakers. At first, there was just static and noise. Then a voice came through. It didn't sound human, but somehow Jake could understand the words. "This is Elder Zeph of the Kolari people. Our world is dying. Our children are dying. We have fought for 3 months, but we cannot win. The Hive has too many ships. Too many weapons. We send this message to anyone who can hear it. Please, if you have any mercy in your hearts, help us. We know we are strangers to you, but we beg you to save our children. Our coordinates are attached to this message. We will fight until the end, but the end is coming soon. The message repeated several times, then went quiet. The bridge was completely silent. Jake felt like someone had hit him in the stomach. Somewhere out there, an entire race of people was being destroyed, and they were begging for help. Lisa, did you get those coordinates? Jake asked quietly. Yes, Captain. They're about 8 hours away from us. Amy, what do your long-range sensors tell us about that area? Dr. Rogers worked at her station for several minutes. When she looked up, her face was pale. Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures. Hundreds of ships. Maybe thousands. And I'm also reading, I think I'm reading weapons fire. A lot of it. Jake closed his eyes and took a deep breath. According to Earth's rules, he was supposed to report any contact with alien life immediately. He was supposed to wait for orders from Earth Command before doing anything. That process would take weeks. But these Kaleri people didn't have weeks. They might not even have days. Pete, set course for those coordinates. Maximum speed. Captain, Pete said carefully, Earth Command is going to be very unhappy if we make first contact without permission. I know, Jake said, but I've heard a lot of calls for help in my life. That message ... those people are desperate. They're going to die if no one helps them. What if it's a trap? Asked Dr. Rogers. What if someone is trying to lure human ships into danger? Jake thought about that. It was possible. But the fear and pain in that alien voice had sounded very real. Then we'll be careful. But we have to try to help. It's the right thing to do. He looked around at his crew. I'm not ordering anyone to come with me. This could end all our careers. Earth Command might court-martial us for this. Anyone who wants to object can do it now. Nobody said anything. Lisa turned back to her communications equipment. Pete started plotting the fastest course to the Kalari coordinates. Dr. Rogers began preparing our sensors for whatever they might find. Karen started pushing the engines to give them more speed. Jake felt proud of his crew, but also scared. They were about to become the first humans to make contact with aliens. And those aliens were in the middle of a war they were losing. How long until we get there? Jake asked. 7 hours and 43 minutes at maximum speed, Pete answered. Good. Lisa, prepare a message to Earth Command. Tell them what we've found and what we're doing. Send it as soon as we drop out of faster-than-light travel. What if they order us to come back? Lisa asked. Jake looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, children were dying while their parents fought a hopeless battle against an enemy they couldn't defeat. Then we'll deal with that when it happens. Right now, someone needs our help, and we're the only ones who can give it. The USS Endeavour raced through space toward the unknown, carrying the first humans who would ever see an alien world. None of them knew that this moment would change the history of the entire galaxy. When the USS Endeavour dropped out of faster-than-light travel, Captain Jake Morrison immediately knew they had found something terrible. The space around them was filled with debris. Pieces of metal and strange materials floated everywhere, glowing with the heat from recent explosions. My God, whispered Dr. Amy Rogers from her science station. Captain, I'm reading the remains of at least 50 ships out there, and they're not human designs. Jake stared at the main screen. In the distance, he could see a blue and green planet. That looked almost like Earth, but between his ship and that planet was something that made his blood turn cold. Massive dark shapes moved through space, each one bigger than the largest human space station. Lisa, are you still getting signals from the planet? Jake asked. Very weak ones, Captain. One thinks most of their communication equipment has been destroyed, but I'm picking up some transmissions from underground. The Calari are still alive, but barely. Pete Williams, the ship's pilot, pointed at the main screen. Captain, look at those big ships. What are they doing? Jake watched in horror as he realized what was happening. The massive alien ships weren't just attacking the planet. They were eating it. Huge beams of energy were pulling pieces of the planet's surface up into the ships. Oceans, forests, even chunks of rock were being sucked up and absorbed. They're harvesting the planet, Dr. Rogers said, her voice shaking. Those ships are literally consuming everything. The land, the water, even the air. What kind of species does that? Jake asked. The kind that doesn't care about anything except feeding itself, Dr. Rogers answered. Captain, based on what I'm seeing, these ships are biological. They're not built like our ships. They're grown, and they're alive. Jake felt sick. The Calari. Message had mentioned something called the Hive. Now he was seeing what the Hive really was. A collection of living ships that traveled from world to world, eating entire planets and everyone on them. How many ships are there? Jake asked. Pete counted the shapes on his screen. At least 400 large ones, Captain, and thousands of smaller ships flying around them. What about Calari ships? Are any of them still fighting? Lisa worked at her communication station. I'm detecting about 30 small ships still active near the planet. They're trying to protect the last cities, but their weapons aren't doing much damage to those Hive ships. Jake watched as one of the small Calari fighters fired everything it had at a massive Hive ship. The weapons barely scratched the surface of the huge bioship. In response, the Hive ship shot out some kind of organic projectile that wrapped around the Calari fighter and pulled it inside. The fighter disappeared completely. Captain, Dr. Rogers said quietly, I'm analyzing the Hive ship's energy patterns. These things have been doing this for a long time, maybe hundreds of years. They move from system to system, consume everything, then move on to the next world. How do they find new worlds to attack? Jake asked. I think they just keep expanding outward, like a disease spreading across the galaxy. They probably don't even know about Earth yet, but eventually they'll find us. Jake felt a chill run through him. If these creatures kept expanding, they would eventually reach human space. Earth, the colony worlds, millions of human lives would be in danger. Captain, Lisa called out urgently. I'm getting a direct transmission from the planet. Someone down there is trying to talk to us. Put it through, Jake ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was weak and full of pain, but Jake could hear the dignity in it. Unknown ship, this is Elder Zeph of the Calari High Council. We do not know who you are, but we see you have come to our system. Please, leave while you still can. The Hive will destroy you as they have destroyed us. Jake picked up the communication device. Elder Zeph, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the human ship USS Endeavor. We received your distress call. We're here to help. There was a long silence. Then Elder Zeph spoke again, and Jake could hear tears in his voice. Humans? We have never heard of you people before, but you came when we called for help. We thought we would die alone. You're not alone, Jake said. Can you tell us about the Hive? How long have they been attacking you? 3 months and 12 days, Elder Zeph answered. They came without warning. Our ships fought bravely, but we are a peaceful people. We had never seen warfare like this. The Hive doesn't just kill us. They consume us. They turn our bodies, our cities, our very world into food for their ships. Dr. Rogers had been listening carefully. Elder Zeph, this is Dr. Amy Rogers. I'm a scientist. Can you tell me how the Hive ships work? How do they consume matter? They use some kind of biological process, Elder Zeph explained. Their ships are alive. They break down everything into basic components, then use those components to grow larger and build more ships. They have consumed 12 of our major cities. Over 2 million of my people are gone. Jake closed his eyes. 2 million people dead, and more dying every minute. How many of you are left? Perhaps 800,000, hiding in underground shelters. But the hive is breaking through our defenses. Our remaining fighters can only delay them for a few more days. Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. They all looked as sick and angry as he felt. These Kaleri had done nothing wrong. They were just a peaceful people trying to live their lives, and now they were being eaten alive by monsters. "Pete," Jake said quietly, "move us closer to the planet, but keep us hidden behind that large moon." "Captain, what are you planning?" Dr. Rogers asked. "I'm planning to get a better look at these hive ships. We need to understand how they work, how they fight, what their weaknesses might be." "Weaknesses?" Pete asked. "Captain, there are hundreds of those things, and each one is bigger than anything humans have ever built." "Every enemy has weaknesses," Jake said. "We just have to find them." The USS Endeavour moved carefully through the debris field, staying hidden while Jake and his crew studied the hive ships. What they saw made them understand just how terrible this enemy really was. The hive ships worked like a swarm of insects. They surrounded the planet completely, making escape impossible. The smaller ships darted down to the surface, grabbed whatever they could, and brought it back to the larger ships. The large ships then processed everything, growing bigger and spawning new smaller ships. "It's like a factory," Karen Davis said from her engineering station. "But a living factory that eats entire worlds." Dr. Rogers had been scanning the hive ships for hours. "Captain, I think I understand how they work now. Each ship is part of a larger organism. They share a collective consciousness. That's why they work together so perfectly." "What does that mean for fighting them?" Jake asked. "It means they don't think like individuals. They think like a hive mind. They're probably very good at working together, but they might not be good at adapting to new situations." Jake nodded. That was something, at least. "What about their technology? How advanced are they?" "That's the strange thing," Dr. Rogers said. "Their ships are incredibly advanced in some ways. The biological technology is beyond anything humans have developed. But their weapons and tactics seem pretty basic. They just overwhelm their enemies with numbers. Because they've never faced serious resistance," Jake realized. "They've been attacking peaceful species like the Kaleri. Species that don't have strong military forces." "Exactly. They've probably never fought anyone who could really fight back." Jake watched as another Kaleri fighter was destroyed. Its pilot's final act, a desperate attempt to ram one of the smaller hive ships. The brave pilot managed to damage the hive ship before being consumed, but there were so many more hive ships that it didn't matter. "Elder Zeph," Jake said into the communicator, "we're going to help you. But first, I need to send a message to my people. They need to know about this threat." "You would risk your own people for us?" Elder Zeph asked, his voice full of wonder. "That's what people do," Jake said simply. "We help each other." Jake turned to Lisa. "Send that message to Earth Command. Now, include everything we've learned about the hive. Make sure they understand that this isn't just about saving the Kaleri. This is about stopping a threat that could eventually destroy every living world in the galaxy." Lisa nodded and began composing the message. Jake knew that when Earth Command received it, everything would change. Humanity would face its first interstellar war. But as he watched the hive ships continuing their terrible work, consuming an entire civilization, Jake knew they had no choice. Someone had to stop these monsters. And right now, humanity might be the only species with the technology and the will to do it. The USS Endeavour continued its silent watch, gathering intelligence while the last free people of Kelara Prime fought their final battle below. The message from Captain Jake Morrison reached Earth in less than 6 hours, thanks to the quantum communication system that connected all human worlds. When Admiral Susan Clark received it at Earth Defense Command, she was having a quiet cup of coffee and reviewing routine patrol reports. After reading Morrison's message 3 times, Admiral Clark's coffee was cold and forgotten. She immediately called an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. "Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral," Clark said to the 12 people gathered around the conference table, "we have a situation unlike anything humanity has ever faced." She played Morrison's message for the Council, including the recordings of Elder Zeph's pleas and the tactical data about the hive ships. When the message ended, the room was completely silent. General Ryan Murphy, head of the Solar Defense Force, was the first to speak. 400 ships, each larger than our biggest space station? Admiral, our entire military has maybe 200 ships total, and most of them are much smaller than what we're seeing here. "The size isn't what worries me most," said Dr. Angela Foster, Earth's leading expert on alien life. "It's their behavior. These hive creatures consume entire worlds. Everything, every person, every animal, every plant, even the rocks and water. They turn it all into more ships." President Maria Santos, who had come to Earth Defense Command as soon as she heard about the message, leaned forward in her chair. "How long before they reach human space?" Admiral Clark checked her star charts. "Based on their expansion pattern and the data Captain Morrison sent, maybe 5 to 10 years. But that's not the real question. The real question is, do we wait for them to come to us, or do we act now?" "What do you mean, act now?" asked General Murphy. "I mean we help these Kalari people. We send a fleet to fight the hive." The room erupted in arguments. Some council members thought it was too dangerous. Others pointed out that humanity had never fought a real space war before. A few wondered if the whole thing might be a trap. President Santos raised her hand for silence. "People, let me ask you something. Captain Morrison said there are 800,000 Kalari people still alive. They're hiding underground while monsters eat their world. If we were in their place, what would we want other species to do?" "Help us," said Dr. Foster quietly. "We'd want them to help us." "Exactly. But there's more to consider. If these hive creatures are really expanding across the galaxy, they will eventually find Earth. When they do, we'll be fighting for our own survival. Wouldn't it be better to fight them now, when we have allies, than later when we're alone?" General Murphy nodded slowly. "The President has a point. If we help the Kalari now, we might gain valuable combat experience. We'll learn how to fight these things before they threaten our own worlds." Admiral Clark brought up a holographic display showing human space. "We have military bases on 15 different worlds. Colony ships on another 30 planets. If the hive reaches human space, all of those people will be in danger." Dr. Foster studied the tactical data again. "There's something else to consider. These hive ships seem to rely on overwhelming numbers and biological technology, but they don't seem to have advanced tactics or electronic warfare capabilities. Humanity's strength has always been our adaptability and our technology." "You think we can beat them?" President Santos asked. "I think we have a better chance than the Kalari did. They were a peaceful people with basic weapons. We've been preparing for interstellar warfare for decades, even if we never expected to use those preparations." Admiral Clark stood up and walked to the star map. "If we're going to do this, we need to move fast. Every day we wait, more Kalari die, and the hive ships get stronger by consuming more of their world. How quickly can we put together a fleet?" President Santos asked. General Murphy pulled up military readiness reports on his tablet. Earth's home fleet has 60 ships. Mars Federation has 40. The outer colonies have maybe 100 between them. But most of those are patrol ships and cargo vessels. We only have about 30 real warships. That's not enough, Admiral. Clark said. We need every ship we can get. What about the civilian ships? Suggested Dr. Foster. Mining vessels, exploration ships, cargo haulers. Could we convert some of them? It would take weeks, General Murphy said. We don't have weeks. President Santos made a decision that would change human history. Send the message. Contact every human world, every colony, every military base. Tell them what we found. Ask for volunteers. Anyone who wants to help save an entire species from extinction. Madam President, Admiral Clark said carefully, you're talking about the largest military operation in human history. We're risking our entire space fleet to save people we've never met. Yes, I am, because that's what humans do. We help people who need help. The call went out across human space within hours. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every single military ship volunteered to join the mission. Civilian captains offered their ships for conversion to military use. Mining colonies sent their most experienced pilots. Even the research stations wanted to help. Captain Beth Morgan, commanding the stealth ship USS Phantom, was in the middle of a routine patrol when she received the message. She immediately changed course toward Earth, pushing her engines to maximum speed. Colonel Jack Turner was training new fighter pilots on Mars when the call came. Within 6 hours, he had his entire squadron ready for departure. Commander Troy Bennett had been exploring the outer rim when he heard about the Calari. He sent back a simple message. My ship and crew volunteer for the mission. We'll meet you at the rally point. The response from the civilian population was just as strong. Families with sons and daughters in the military sent messages of support. Factories worked around the clock to produce weapons and supplies. Children in schools made care packages for the crews. On New Texas, the colonial government voted to send their entire defense fleet. Governor Sam Wright personally delivered the message. These hive creatures represent a threat to all life in the galaxy. New Texas stands with Earth and the Calari. The Mars Federation, which had always been somewhat independent from Earth, offered their most advanced weapons technology. Director Linda Chun explained their decision. We may have our political differences with Earth, but we're all human. And humans protect innocent people. Dr. Foster worked day and night to analyze the hive data and develop new weapons. Their ships are biological, she explained to a team of engineers. That means they might be vulnerable to viruses, toxins, things that could disrupt their biological processes. Within 1 week, the impossible had happened. A fleet of over 200 ships gathered in Earth orbit. Some were military vessels with experienced crews. Others were civilian ships that had been quickly converted for combat. All of them were crewed by volunteers who had come to fight for people they had never met. Admiral Nick Bradley, a veteran of the Mars independence conflicts, was chosen to command the fleet. He was known for his tactical brilliance and his ability to keep calm under pressure. People, Admiral Bradley said to his captains in a final briefing, we're about to make history. We're going to be the first humans to fight an interstellar war. But remember why we're doing this. Somewhere out there, 800,000 people are waiting for us to save them. We're not going to let them down. Captain Morrison, still, watching the horror at Kalara Prime, received a message that made him smile for the first time in days. Jake, this is Admiral Clark. Hold your position. Help is coming. The largest fleet in human history is on its way to you. Tell the Calari to hang on just a little longer. Morrison passed the message to Elder Zeph, who was hiding in a bunker deep underground while hive creatures destroyed the surface above him. Elder Zeph, Morrison said, I need you to pass a message to your people. Tell them that help is coming. 200 human ships are on their way. Your children are going to live. There was a long silence from the planet below. Then Elder Zeph spoke, his voice full of wonder and hope. Captain Morrison, your people would risk so much for strangers? Elder Zeph, Morrison replied, you're not strangers anymore. You're our friends. And friends help each other. As the human fleet prepared to leave for Kalara Prime, the mood across human space was unlike anything in history. For the first time, all of humanity was united behind a single cause. They were going to war not for territory or resources, but to save innocent lives. The fleet departed Earth orbit in the largest formation of human ships ever assembled. As they jumped to faster-than-light speed, Admiral Bradley sent one final message back to Earth. Tell our families we'll be home soon, and we'll be bringing some new friends with us. Behind them, Earth's factories continued working at full capacity, producing more ships and weapons. Just in case the first fleet wasn't enough. Humanity had heard the Kalari's plea for help, and they had answered with everything they had. The human fleet arrived at Kalara Prime to find a dying world. More than half the planet's surface had been consumed by the hive ships. The beautiful blue oceans were now gray and shallow. The green forests were gone, leaving only bare rock behind. Admiral Nick Bradley stood on the bridge of the USS Constitution, the largest ship in the human fleet. Around him, 200 human vessels moved into formation. He had never seen anything like the hive ships before. They were massive, dark, and clearly alive. Admiral, said Commander Troy Bennett from his smaller ship, I count 400, and 12 large hive vessels, plus thousands of smaller ones. They're not paying any attention to us yet. That's because they've never seen real opposition before, Admiral Bradley replied. Captain Morrison, what's the status of the Kalari survivors? Captain Jake Morrison, still in the system aboard the USS Endeavour, answered immediately. About 700,000 people left, Admiral. They're in deep underground shelters. But the hive is breaking through their defenses. Elder Zeph says they have maybe 12 hours before the shelters are compromised. Admiral Bradley looked at his tactical display. The hive ships were spread out across the planet's surface, each one slowly consuming everything it touched. They moved like they had all the time in the world, because they had never been challenged before. All ships, this is Admiral Bradley. We're going to show these creatures what happens when they threaten innocent people. But we're going to be smart about it. Commander Bennett, take your squadron and hit the hive ships on the far side of the planet. Make them think that's our main attack. Understood, Admiral. We'll give them something to think about. Captain Morgan, Bradley continued, speaking to the commander of the stealth ship USS Phantom, use your electronic warfare systems to jam their communications. I want these things confused and unable to coordinate. Already working on it. Admiral, their biological communication systems are surprisingly easy to disrupt. Bradley smiled grimly. The hive had never fought an enemy that used electronic warfare before. They were about to learn what human military technology could do. All fighter squadrons, prepare for launch. Colonel Turner, I want your pilots ready to exploit any openings we create. Colonel Jack Turner, commanding the fighter wings, responded from his carrier ship. My pilots are ready, Admiral. We've been studying the hive ship designs. We think we know where their weak points are. The battle began exactly as Admiral Bradley had planned. Commander Bennett's squadron appeared on the far side of the planet and began attacking the hive ships there. The hive responded exactly as expected. They sent hundreds of their smaller ships to deal with what they thought was the main threat. At the same time, Captain Morgan's electronic warfare attacks started disrupting the hive's communications. For the first time in their existence, the hive ships couldn't coordinate their actions perfectly. "Now," Admiral Bradley ordered. "All ships, attack formation Alpha. Target the large ships first." The human fleet struck like a hammer. Quantum torpedoes, developed in Earth's secret weapons labs, punched through the hive ship's biological armor like it was paper. Laser cannons, powered by fusion reactors, burned massive holes in the living vessels. The hive's response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of smaller ships swarmed toward the human fleet, but they were met by Colonel Turner's fighters. The human pilots, trained for decades in combat tactics, turned the hive's numbers against them. "Use their size against them," Colonel Turner shouted to his pilots. "They're too big to maneuver quickly. Hit and run." Lieutenant Frank Miller, flying one of the newest human fighters, dove between two massive hive ships and fired his weapons at the connection point between them. The biological material there was softer, and his shots caused serious damage. Captain Beth Morgan, commanding the USS Phantom, used her ship's stealth systems to get close to one of the largest hive vessels. Her quantum torpedoes, modified with Dr. Foster's biological viruses, not only damaged the ship, but began corrupting its biological systems. "Admiral," she reported excitedly, "the virus warheads are working. The hive ship is literally eating itself." Chief Weapons Officer Diana Lee, aboard the USS Constitution, watched as her modified weapons caused chaos among the hive ships. "Admiral, their ships are trying to heal themselves, but our viruses are preventing the healing process. They're actually getting weaker as the battle goes on." Admiral Bradley couldn't believe what he was seeing. The mighty hive fleet, which had destroyed entire civilizations, was being torn apart by human weapons and tactics. The hive had never faced an enemy that could adapt and innovate during battle. But the hive wasn't finished. The largest ship, bigger than a human city, began moving toward the planet's surface. It was heading directly for the underground shelters where the Kalari survivors were hiding. "They're going after the civilians," Captain Morrison warned. "If that ship reaches the shelters, it will consume everyone inside." "Not if I can help it," said Sergeant Kevin Ross, commanding a Marine assault ship. "Admiral, request permission to board that ship and stop it from the inside." "Negative, Sergeant. That's too dangerous." "With respect, Admiral, those are children. Down there. I didn't come all this way to watch kids die." Admiral Bradley made a split-second decision. Permission granted. "Take your best Marines and stop that ship. The rest of the fleet will cover you." Sergeant Ross's assault ship, protected by fighter escorts, raced toward the massive hive vessel. The ship was so big that it had its own defense systems, but the human fighters cleared a path through them. Ross and his Marines used special boarding pods to break through the hive ship's biological hull. Once inside, they found themselves in a nightmare world of living corridors and organic machinery. "This whole ship is like one giant organism," Ross reported, as his Marines fought their way toward the ship's control center. "But it doesn't seem to know how to deal with attackers inside it." The Marines used plasma weapons designed to disrupt biological systems. Every shot they fired caused the ship to convulse in pain and confusion. The hive ship, which had never been attacked from the inside before, began to malfunction. While the Marines fought inside the massive ship, the space battle continued above. Admiral Bradley watched as ship after ship of the hive fleet was destroyed or disabled. The creatures that had consumed entire worlds were being defeated by human ingenuity and determination. "Admiral," Captain Morrison called out, "I'm getting signals from the planet. The Kalari are coming out of their shelters. They can see the battle, and they're cheering." On the planet's surface, Elder Zeph and the surviving Kalari watched in amazement as the human fleet tore apart their destroyers. Children who had lived in underground darkness for months saw sunlight for the first time since the hive arrived. The humans, Elder Zeph whispered to his aide. "They're actually winning. They're saving us." Sergeant Ross and his Marines reached the control center of the massive hive ship. It was a pulsing, living chamber filled with organic controls that looked more like body organs than machinery. "Sergeant," one of his Marines said, "I think this whole center is the ship's brain. If we destroy this, the whole ship should die." "Do it," Ross ordered. "For the Kaleri kids." The Marines placed their strongest charges around the biological brain. When they exploded, the entire ship shuddered and began falling toward the planet's surface. But it was falling in a controlled way, away from the Kaleri shelters. "This is Sergeant Ross. Mission accomplished. The big ship is down." In space above, the last of the hive ships were either destroyed or fleeing the system. For the first time in their existence, the Hive Collective had been defeated in battle. Admiral Bradley opened communications to the entire fleet. "All ships. This is Admiral Bradley. The Hive fleet has been destroyed or driven off. Kalara Prime is free." The cheers from 200 human ships could probably be heard all the way to Earth, but the loudest cheers came from the planet below, where 700,000 Kalari people were emerging from their shelters to see their world saved. Captain Morrison landed his ship near the largest Kalari settlement. When Elder Zeph came aboard, the old alien leader had tears in his eyes. "Captain Morrison," Elder Zeph said, "your people have given us back our lives. Our children will grow up free. Because of what you did here today, how can we ever repay you?" Morrison smiled and put his hand on the alien leader's shoulder. "Elder Zeph, you don't need to repay us. You just need to help us make sure this never happens to anyone else again." The battle for Kalara Prime was over. Humanity had won its first interstellar war. But more importantly, they had saved an entire species from extinction. As the human fleet began rescue and recovery operations, Admiral Bradley sent a message back to Earth. "Mission accomplished. The Kalari are safe. And we've learned something important today. The Hive can be beaten. They're not invincible." The message that reached Earth sparked celebrations across human space. But it also started preparations for what everyone knew would come next. The Hive Collective was still out there, and now they knew about humanity. The real war was just beginning. 6 months after the battle at Kalara Prime, the galaxy was a different place. News of humanity's victory had spread to every corner of known space, reaching species that had hidden in fear for centuries. Admiral Susan Clark stood in the new command center on Kalara Prime, looking out at a sight that still amazed her. The planet was healing. Human terraforming technology was restoring the damaged ecosystems, while Kalari engineers worked alongside human scientists to rebuild their cities. Elder Zeph, now serving as the first alien ambassador to humanity, approached with news that would change everything. "Admiral Clark," he said in his careful English, "we have received responses from 43 different species across the galaxy. They all want to join the alliance against the Hive." Admiral Clark smiled. It had taken humanity's victory to convince other species that the Hive Collective could actually be defeated. "What kind of species are we talking about, Elder Zeph?" "Scientists, engineers, warriors, explorers. The Vaxari have technology that could improve our shields. The Zentari have weapons we never dreamed of. The Morlock have information about Hive movements going back hundreds of years." Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to Admiral Morrison, entered the command center with more good news. "Admiral Clark, the deep space sensors have picked up something incredible. A fleet of over 2,000 ships from various species is heading this way. They want to coordinate with us." Admiral Clark felt a thrill of excitement mixed with responsibility. Humanity had gone from being alone in the galaxy to leading the largest military alliance in galactic history, all because they had answered. One desperate plea for help. Dr. Angela Foster, who had been studying hive technology for months, brought her latest report. Admiral, we've learned something important about the Hive Collective. They're not just randomly expanding. They're heading toward the galactic core, where the oldest and most populated worlds are located. How long do we have? Admiral Clark asked. Based on their movement patterns, maybe 2 years before they reach the core systems. But there's more. Our scouts have detected the main Hive fleet. Admiral, there are over 10,000 ships in that fleet, each one bigger than anything we faced at Kalara Prime. Admiral Clark felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. The victory at Kalara Prime had been against a small Hive group. The main fleet would be a completely different challenge. What about Earth's military production? She asked Admiral Morrison, working at full capacity. We now have over 800 human ships, and more coming online every month. The Mars shipyards are producing new designs based on what we learned. Fighting the Hive. Elder Zeph added his own report. The Kalari have shared all our historical knowledge about the Hive with the other species. We've identified patterns in their attacks, weaknesses we never noticed before. Admiral Clark walked to the main display, which showed a map of the galaxy. Red markers showed known Hive positions. Blue markers showed allied worlds. The red was slowly moving toward the most populated areas of blue. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, we're about to fight the largest battle in galactic history. But this time, we won't be fighting alone. The alliance that formed over the next year was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Zentari, a warrior species, provided advanced plasma weapons. The Vaxari, master engineers, created shield technology that could protect entire fleets. The Kalari, grateful for their salvation, served as diplomats and coordinators. Humanity's role in the alliance was clear. They were the military leaders. Other species had advanced technology or specialized knowledge, but humans had something unique, the ability to coordinate complex military operations and adapt quickly to changing situations. Admiral Nick Bradley, hero of Kalara Prime, was given command of the largest fleet ever assembled. 50,000 ships from 200 different species, all united under human tactical doctrine. The final battle took place in the Nexus system, near the galactic core. It was here that the main Hive fleet was heading, intent on consuming the oldest and most populated worlds in the galaxy. When the two fleets met, the battle was visible from planets hundreds of light years away. 10,000 Hive bioships faced 50,000 allied vessels in a fight that would determine the future of all life in the galaxy. Admiral Bradley used everything humanity had learned about fighting the Hive. Electronic warfare ships disrupted their communications. Fast attack. Vessels hit their weak points. Marine boarding parties attacked from within. But the real advantage was coordination. The Hive ships, for all their biological perfection, still fought like a swarm of insects. The Allied fleet fought like a single, intelligent organism. Captain Beth Morgan, now commanding a squadron of stealth ships, led devastating attacks on Hive command vessels. Colonel Jack Turner's fighters, now including pilots from dozens of species, created chaos in the Hive formations. The battle lasted for 3 days. When it was over, the main Hive fleet was destroyed. The few surviving bioships fled toward the galactic rim, their collective consciousness shattered by the defeat. But the real victory wasn't the destruction of the Hive fleet. It was what happened next. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered on Kalara Prime to sign the Galactic Defense Accord. For the first time in history, hundreds of species agreed to work together for mutual protection. Elder Zeph, now elderly, but still serving as a diplomat, gave the opening speech. 1 year ago, my people faced extinction. We sent out a desperate plea, hoping that someone somewhere would hear us and care enough to help. The humans answered that call, and in doing so, they saved not just the Kalari, but the entire galaxy. Admiral Clark, now Supreme Commander of Allied Forces, accepted the responsibility that came with the position. We will make sure that no species ever again faces extinction alone. The strong will protect the weak. That is our promise to the Chew. Galaxy. The new galactic order was based on principles that humanity had brought to the stars: mutual aid, protection of the innocent, and the belief that all sapient life had value. The Kalari, once facing extinction, became the galaxy's diplomatic corps. Their gift for languages and their deep gratitude made them perfect ambassadors between species. Human shipyards worked with alien engineers to create new types of vessels designed for protection rather than conquest. Patrol fleets were stationed throughout the galaxy, ready to respond to any threat. The Hive Collective still existed somewhere in the galactic rim, but they had learned a crucial lesson. The galaxy was no longer defenseless. Any attempt to resume their expansion would be met with immediate and overwhelming force. Captain Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, established the Rapid Response Force, small fleets that could reach any threatened world within days. His first command was simple: when someone calls for help, we answer, always. The story ended where it began, with a distress call. But this time, the call came from human colonists on a distant world, threatened by pirates. The response was immediate. A mixed fleet of human, Kalari, Centauri, and Voxery ships arrived within hours. Elder Zeph, now very old but still serving as an ambassador, watched the rescue operation from the bridge of a human ship. "Captain Morrison," he said, "do you remember what you told me during our darkest hour? You said we weren't strangers anymore, that we were friends." Morrison, gray-haired now but still in command, nodded. "I remember. You were wrong," Elder Zeph said with a smile. "We weren't just friends. We became family, all of us. The entire galaxy." Morrison looked out at the mixed fleet of ships, each one crewed by beings from different worlds, all working together to protect innocent lives. "You're right, Elder Zeph. We are family, and families protect each other." The plea that had compelled humanity to bring its full military power had done more than save the Kalari. It had transformed the galaxy from a place where species lived in isolation and fear into a place where no one faced danger alone. Human children now grew up learning the languages and customs of dozens of alien species. Kalari young ones played in parks rebuilt with human technology. Throughout the galaxy, different species worked together, learned from each other, and protected each other. The Hive Collective had taught the galaxy about the power of destruction. Humanity had taught it's something more important, the power of compassion. In the end, it wasn't advanced weapons or superior technology that saved the galaxy. It was the simple human belief that when someone calls for help, you answer, no matter who they are, no matter how dangerous it might be. That belief had turned a desperate plea into the foundation of a new galactic civilization, one where the strong protected the weak and no one faced the darkness alone. The stars that had once seemed cold and distant now blazed with the warmth of friendship between species. And somewhere in that vast galaxy, if anyone called for help, they could be certain that help would come. Because that's what families do.